Hello, I'm Dr. Sarah Peters. I'm academic lead for PGR student experience at the University of Manchester. And I was fortunate to be part of one of the 17 funded Catalyst projects. At Manchester, our project was a collaboration between the university and the Students' Union. And it involved 7 different work streams. It was quite an ambitious project. And these were around focusing on prevention, support, and also referring for students who were struggling. The first of our work packages was our research component, and here we were trying to understand the prevalence of wellbeing difficulties in our PGR population, and also what factors were influencing their help seeking. And it's just been published in Studies in Graduate and Postdoctoral Education, if you'd like to read up a bit more about it. Essentially, it was a mixed methods project which involved a survey, a longitudinal survey of PGRs, and then a really substantial qualitative study of academic and professional support staff. And what we found was actually very elevated levels of depression and or anxiety. So 2/3 of our respondents reported elevated levels of depression and anxiety, and 1/3 of those were reaching clinically significant levels, and those levels were statistically higher than age-matched population norms, and were particularly high for certain populations within our PGR community, so students with disabilities, for example. In terms of the qualitative work, what we found were 4 factors that seemed to be operating on student experience and their help seeking. So the first one was around the expectations and the challenges for doing postgraduate research. So there was a real culture of high achievement. There was a lot of stigma about help seeking. Students were often isolated in the way that they were working. And also what staff were reporting was that over time there had been an increase in the competencies and expectations of students. So they were expected now to be competent not only as researchers, but also as teachers and in science communication, for example. And there seemed to be particular pinch points during their journey. So the transition from taught program into an unstructured program was particularly challenging, maintaining the motivation during those middle years, and also that writing up period if it was unfunded. What came through very clearly was the importance of the supervisor role. So supervisors were absolutely the primary source of support for any mental health problems. Over 50% of our respondents had sought support for mental health problems from their supervisor in the last 3 months. And so where that relationship was positive, that was a really important source of support, and that was really helpful to them. But where it was strained or difficult, or actually was the source of difficulty in itself, actually not only was it a source of problem, but also it prevented students from being able to access support and other services. What also came out was the complexity of that role. So there was really varied quality in relationships. And also what was important seemed to be about the researcher identity. So there was a lots of discussion about whether students were staff or students, whether PGRs were staff or students. And actually that meant sometimes it was difficult for them to access services or feel that services were appropriate. And actually university services really didn't understand the PGR journey or the role very well at all. So there were a number of recommendations that came from this research, particularly around this recognising the distinctiveness of the PGR journey and trying to have a wellbeing strategy that was relevant for PGRs and was supported. We wanted to look at the review of the structure and the length of PhD programmes so that there was funding for that extra writing up period, and also there was more flexible options. It's important to have mechanisms for recognising supervision and valuing supervision. So we're now including that in promotion criteria and also as part of staff appraisals, and investing lots in staff training. So we have a new supervisor toolkit for staff and mandatory training for all new academics as part of our new academic programme. And we also want to make sure that we're routinely collecting data around interruptions and extensions around mental health so that we can monitor what's going on and act quickly. Our next set of work packages was about engaging PGRs with our various wellbeing activities that are going on around the university. So we used the 6 Ways to Wellbeing, which is the framework that we use at Manchester for our staff and our talk programmes, and we wanted to see how relevant that was for our PGRs. So we did lots of activities around that, and including piloting a wellbeing tool, self-reflection tool, and running lots of different initiatives, including lots of sort of peer-to-peer support as well, and look to see how we needed to adapt those for the PGR context. And what we're doing now is rolling those out more widely across the university and making sure that we've got a really nice suite of wellbeing sessions available in our training catalogue, as well as investing more in a support role to help coordinate those activities. Our third set of work packages was around wellbeing resource development. So what we did was a piece of work to try and identify what resources that we had, to review them and to curate them so that they could be accessed by PGRs and make sure they're PGR-appropriate. So we ran lots of focus groups to try and understand our provision gaps, and also to look at those resources, particularly some of the wellbeing apps that we've developed in-house, but also have been developed outside the university. So that involved a really big overhaul of our PGR Life website, creating loads of new resources. We had lots of fun making talking head videos and podcasts, and also importantly making sure that they were not just available on a PGR specific website, but also that they were embedded in all the other relevant sites, so our counselling services site, for example, and our supervisor training. And then our final work package was around trying to improve the way the university links to NHS. So trying to create smoother pathways so that PGRs who are experiencing severe difficulties can access support more quickly and more easily. And this was a really big initiative that involved all the higher education institutes in the area, and we created a new mental health service for students. And as well as that, we also did some work to try and create some more resources about this unique PGR experience, and making sure that we're training up staff who interact or might interact with PGR staff, for example, in our counselling services and student support, to make sure they really understand what the nature of being a PGR is. So what this project did for us, well, it absolutely created lots of energy and a real focus across the university around PGR well-being. We were able to match funding, so it levied funding for us, and we were able to continue that investment. We were able to create some tangible outputs that were real PGR specific that we can now implement and make sure we're rolling out. I think we learned a lot. We learned a lot about the challenges of PGR programmes and how services can better prevent mental health and wellbeing issues arising, and also support PGRs who are experiencing them. We've created lots of new processes and mechanisms, and that's been really important because although, of course, there were always really excellent pockets of practice within the university, what we can now do is make sure that those are much more consistent across the university. And I think what we're beginning to see is a shift in culture, where our university we're really beginning to ensure that the distinctiveness of the PGR journey is much better understood, and also recognise the value of supervisor experience, of a supervisor excellence, and to invest in that. So finally, I just want to thank our fantastic PGR consultative forum. We had 127 members who took part in all of these workshops and gave us loads of fantastic feedback, and were really energised and engaged. We also had a fantastic external advisory board who are a critical friend for us throughout the project. And here's some of the team. Now, this team has grown and grown as we've developed and rolled things out, but this is the team that were involved throughout the whole project. And if you'd like to get in touch and find out any more, please do at sarah.peters@manchester.ac.uk. Thank you.